Are you looking for details of the most beautiful weekend hikes in South East Queensland and further afield? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Everyday Hiker podcast. My name is Beck and I'm your host. Join me and my guest hikers as we share amazing locations, practical tips and guides for new hikers, as well as those with more experience looking for some inspiration. And please, if you like what you hear, follow me, share with your friends, rate my podcast and send me your feedback. Hello, today I'm going to sneak in an extra episode as just over a week ago I did a wonderful return hike to Mt Cordeaux and Bear Rock, and the main purpose of that hike was to see if we could catch the spear lilies in bloom, and we were successful after missing them the year before. So I wanted to share with you, because it's early spring, why it's such a great time to get up to this mountain range, which is accessed via Cunningham's Gap. So first, for the logistics of getting there, Cunningham's Gap is in the Main Range National Park. It's located about an hour and 15 minutes from Brisbane, and depending on where you're starting from, you head out on the road to Ipswich, then on to Warwick via Amberley, and you keep going from there. And if you're looking to do a stop, if you need to stop and get a cup of coffee before you head out on your walk, then Arachula is the town to head for. There's a fantastic bakery there. There's toilets on the side of the road, but also in the bakery, and it's a great place to refuel. And from Arachula, it's about another 15 minutes to the car park for these walks. Now, one thing that has kept me, and I know others, away from doing the walks up at Main Range via Cunningham's Gap is the never-ending roadworks. And I'm sorry to say they're still going. They were supposed to be finished by now. And what that means for us as hikers is that the car park that used to be at the base of Mt Cordeaux and opposite the start of the trail to Mount Mitchell across the road is now closed and being used exclusively by the transport workers or the main roads workers, and you now have to go a little further along the highway, so through the gap, and there's a car park called West Gap Car Park. It comes up actually with very little notice, so keep a watch out for the sign. Comes up on your right, and once you get into that car park, there's sort of two levels of car parks. There's some decent, certainly more car parks than what there were in the original car park. Decent car parking space in there, and there's toilets and there's an information and a maps board as a way to start the walks in this area. It did at first seem annoying, and the reason why I'd been avoiding it is it does add on 5 kilometres return to your walk up to Mt Cordeaux and others. However, after having done it, it is actually a really lovely little 2.5k trail. So within 5 minutes, we're rock hopping across a creek. We saw a cute little patermelon bounding across the track. You're climbing under a couple of big fallen trees, and it's just a pretty track, and it takes you less than half an hour, and you get up to the original Mt Cordeaux car park. And there are toilets there as well. For you to start your climb up Mt Cordeaux. It's a pretty moderate walk up to the peak of Mt Cordeaux. Probably take you somewhere in between 45 minutes to an hour. And it's a nice walk as well. Well-graded track, nothing really to have to worry about. And there's a bit of a circuit on the way up there. As we were nearing the peak, we saw our first spear lilies, so we knew they were out. Don't spend too much time looking here. The best part is yet to come, and really walking away from the Mt Cordeaux rocky area is where you're going to get the best views of the spear lilies. So getting up to Mt Cordeaux, so it's about 6.9 kilometres return up to Mt Cordeaux, so a fairly modest 3.5 kilometre walk. There's a rocky outcrop that you can sit on. There's lovely views from here of Mugara Dam and Mount Edwards and sort of the scenic rim mountain range behind it, and so you'll get some lovely photos up there. A good tea stop. You could then head straight back down to the car park, but I think if you did, you would miss not only another set of lovely views at Bear Rock, but the best views of the spear lilies. So as you're heading back down from that summit of Mt Cordeaux, you get a choice of heading down or going right onto the track to Bear Rock, and that's the one I would suggest you take. Even if you don't get as far as Bear Rock, as you start walking out on that trail, maybe a kilometre, you'll see the spear lilies right, like draping over the track. These massive, and to give you some idea, they're sort of like a massive grass tree, like a yucca sort of base with a huge spear, hence the name, and just a waterfall of red flowers, but they're very, very large. They're twice the height of me, some of them, draping over the track. But where they really are so prolific and look so amazing is that they literally cover the peak of Mt Cordeaux that you can't climb. And so you're looking out from the summit view at the first part of Mt Cordeaux, or also from this track connecting Mt Cordeaux to Bear Rock. You're looking at the back side of Mt Cordeaux, and there's just a real riot of red colour, and it's really beautiful. You get some fantastic photos. Heading out to Bear Rock itself, you've got another flat rocky outcrop that you can take another break on. It's got different views this time, looking over more the backside of the mountain range, but a really nice diversion. You can also go out to Morgan's Walk, which is another lookout, which feels a little bit closer with those views of Muggera Dam. We were lucky. There was so much wildlife out on the trail when we were there recently, and one of the things was a massive python on that track out to Mount Morgan, and he wasn't moving, obviously harmless, and so we just did the right thing and walked around him. But we also saw a lyrebird flashing his tail and making a hell of a lot of noise on the way back down from Bear Rock and Morgan's Walk. And like I said, patermelons and just a profusion of birds. It's really a lovely walk and worth the effort of getting around that roadwork that is still going on there, and absolute best time of the year to go now in this early spring to get those spear lilies. So if you do Mt Cordeaux and Bear Rock and that little diversion out to Morgan's Walk, you're probably looking at about 18 kilometres from the car park. Now that sounds like a lot, but in actual fact it didn't feel like a hard or a long day, especially if you take your time. Quite manageable and a really pretty walk and a well worth day to go up there. A couple of other ideas while you're up there. Firstly, Mt Cordeaux used to be a perfect sunrise walk or sunset because it's pretty short, 3.5 kilometres. That was from the original car park. I don't know how successful that would be unless you were feeling really confident in doing this extra extension of 5Ks. But if you think you're up for that and you've got a good headlamp, then a great spot for sunrise or sunset. Obviously needing the headlamp on one way either up or on the way back. We did sunrise, and it's a great place to sit and take up a flask of tea and coffee, have an early breakfast. It really is a beautiful view. The only caution I would say is that there is a drop-off on the track to Mt Cordeaux. No problem during the day, you can see it clearly and it's not unsafe in any way, but I guess in the dark you'd have to be a little more aware of that and verge towards the mountain itself. The other thing you can do is just across the road from Mt Cordeaux is Mount Mitchell, and you access Mount Mitchell by crossing the highway, which the workers are quite helpful. I watched them helping people walk across over to Mount Mitchell. Now the climb up Mount Mitchell is a nice one. There can be a little bit of vegetation on the trail at times that you have to cope with, but there are twin peaks up the top with fantastic views of the Fassifern Valley below, and that is at 12 k's. That's longer than Mt Cordeaux and Bear Rock, which would normally be around the 9k mark. It's also, the gradient is slightly harder. To do both of them, to do Cordeaux, Bear Rock and Mount Mitchell in a day is an extremely long day, about 30 kilometres all up. And the only benefit of doing it in a day at the moment is that you save yourself doing the 5k return walk from the new car park once. But I would suggest that it's a great way to do it is to split it over 2 days while you're in the region, and that's certainly what we did. And I'm going to do a shout out here to the Merivale pub, which is where we stayed. This is a great pub for food, for chatting with the locals. They've got a couple of rooms, renovated rooms inside the pub. It's about maybe a 10 to 15 minute drive from Cunningham's Gap, but they also do free camping in the grounds of the pub if you have a meal with them, which would be well worth doing. The other place you could think of staying is Bestbrook Mountain Resort, which is probably, well, it is the closest accommodation. They have cabins and camping there. Or if you're out for the weekend, I know Goombra and Gordon Country, two of most cherished camping spots in this area. The problem is that you have to do a bit of a loop to get to them, and it's probably about 45 minutes from Cunningham's Gap, but that's the other alternative to stay out for the weekend. And lastly, if you are coming out for the weekend, so you're coming in via Arachula into the region, on the way home, if you don't mind spending probably about an extra hour on your journey, but so worth it. You can go home heading out towards, as if you're going to Warwick, but turn off to Killarney, head up to the Queen Mary Falls, which is a short but spectacular waterfall view, a short walk, to a spectacular waterfall view. But the road from Queen Mary Falls back to Boona is called Mount Alfred Road. I think it's one of the prettiest in South East Queensland. And if you've ever thought about climbing the steamers, terrific view of the steamers from here, give you a bit of a perspective of some of the other mountains in the area, and then you're home via Boona going into Brisbane. Like I said, it'll probably add about an hour, but just a gorgeous drive, well worth a stop at Queen Mary Falls. So that's just about it. A very quick rundown on Mt Cordeaux, Bear Rock, Mount Mitchell. It's just such a great time of the year to visit. Don't worry about the roadworks. Hopefully it'll be finished soon so we can go back to using it as a sunrise or a sunset base. But I really hope you get a chance to get out there anyway to one of my favourite walks in South East Queensland. Thanks very much for listening. You'll find details of the trails and locations and all the details of things we discussed today in the show notes. And don't forget, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave me feedback, suggestions or ideas. And I'd really appreciate if you like what you hear, rate me, follow me or share with your friends. Thank you, and until next time, happy hiking.